So moving away from the great speaker to a technical person now. So I have a few questions related to Java because, of course, we all talk about Java language nowadays. So when you talk about the releases, in fact, in one of your talk you mentioned that Java 8 is actually a reborn of Java, where Java was about to die. Because of Java 8, it again got the momentum and industry started using it. But now if you see the release, Oracle is doing release every 6 months now. So what are your thoughts on the releases in every 6 months? Is it easy for developers to adapt it, or they are just doing it so that they can compete with other languages?
So there are twofold to this. One is, if you really, let's separate these two out. The 6 months releases is really all about agility in terms of evolution of the language. If you look back in time, they did something that we all know not to do, and yet that's exactly where they fell into the trap. And if you say, here is everything that's going to go to a release, into a release, when you have the least idea of the complexities and the challenges involved, which is very counter to what we do in our field. From the agile development point of view, the entire point about agility is adaptive planning. So they finally realized, and I think this is one of the best remarkable things they actually did, is to say, we are not going to commit what actually goes into a release. We're going to work on these features. The features are going to take as much time as they take. For example, if you take a feature in Java 10, which is type inference, they literally took 5 years to develop it. If you look at the feature in Java 19, which is virtual threads, they've taken 15 years to develop it. These were not done in 6 months.
Right.
But the beauty is, when you have these multiple features coming in, they are not saying a release will have these features in it. When a feature is ready, it can be released.
Okay.
This is very adaptive. This is being very practical. So by doing so, they have managed to release more features by not committing to the features ahead of time. This is the true, living example of what true agility should be and can be. This is a great lesson for the rest of us to learn from in terms of how they have been developing it. So the release cycle of Java is not about you and me as developers. The release cycle of Java is about the development of the Java language.
Right.
To be agile, to be able to release, much more frequently, and to be able to take the feedback from developers and to be able to come back and refine it. But having said that, as a programmer, what does that mean to us? Practically speaking, this is a question I ask all the time. I go to developers and say, tell me something in Java 8 that you're excited about, right? The immediate answer is Lambda expressions.
Right.
And I'd say, okay, cool, tell me more. Streams. Cool, tell me more. And they're like, what else can I tell you?
Same point.
We totally forgot about completable future. Now, in fact, I wrote a book on Java 8. I didn't even mention completable future in it. Why is that? The reason is, when you are given so much in one shot, there's only so much you can take.
Right.
And so your focus is going to be on some aspects, and the others you're probably not going to pay attention to.
True.
Now Java is being released in bite-size releases. You can focus on a release, and you can say, what's in this release? Oh, you got type inference. Great. I can focus on type inference. I've got 6 months to focus on one thing.
Right.
What's in this one? Oh, you got records. What else? That's it. Focus on records. You got text blocks. What else? That's it. So you got this bite-sized improvement. If you're keeping up with the changes, you can keep up with these because it's not overwhelming. You're not thrust on 70 things you can learn. Hey, there's one thing you can learn about.
Right.
But the challenge, though, is this now turns into agility on the development of application side. We talk about agility, but are we truly agile? Well, unfortunately, though, in a corporate environment, if I fear making change, because if I make a change, what if things break? Well, if things break, I'm going to be in trouble, so I'm not going to change. Well, if I don't change, now I'm holding on to Java 8, literally 9 years after release.
Right.
This is not going to help me to keep up with the change in the language. So now I look at Java, oh my gosh, there are 70 things I need to learn because I haven't kept up with it.
Yeah.
So this is not situation to be fearful of the change, but to really question that and say, why are we not able to keep up with it? Well, if we don't have sustainable engineering practices, we're going to be resistant to change.
Right.
And if we resist changing, it's going to push us back. And if we get pushed back, it's going to increase the cost of us changing in the future. So this is an opportunity for us as developers to ask the question, rather than talking about being, doing agile, how can we be agile? And that really comes back to following, fairly good automated testing, reducing complexity, keeping with change, being incremental. Then we can be in sync with the change. So is it easy or hard to developers? The answer to that is it's easy for Oracle because not because they want it to be easy, they want it to be effective, right? And because they are effective, now it's easy for them to keep moving the language. But that's just lesson for us to look back and say, what can we do to embrace that change? Because after all, agile development is about embracing change.
True.
If I can't embrace the change in the evolution of the language, the question there is to ask the question, what's the reason for it?
Yeah.
And so if we are able to embrace the change, it's easy. Otherwise, I think it's hard.
Cool. A lot of different perspective on one thing. Awesome. Now, this question is actually coming from the audience, which is towards the JavaScript language. I have seen it's my observation as well, and for me, I started my career as a Java developer. I worked on Kotlin, moved to Scala, explored those technologies. Every time I wanted to learn JavaScript or make a project on JavaScript, it's not like I have not done it, but I was trying to stay away from JavaScript. So why do you think, if you are agree with this point, but why do you think Java developers stay away from JavaScript?
I can tell you from my own perspective. So again, I'm going back about 25 years ago. It's not that I stayed away from JavaScript. I feared JavaScript.
Yeah, okay.
And part of the reason I feared JavaScript back in time, I came from the background of C++, like I mentioned earlier, and I started programming in Java and C#. You can see the pattern here. All of them are statically typed languages.
Yeah.
You had a compiler for C++ that verified your, variables and types. And yes, you could cast your way through, but Java made it a lot more easier to verify the types, and so did C#. And all of a sudden, you look at this JavaScript, it's on one hand dynamically typed, and then even making it worse, it's weakly typed as well.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like suddenly you are walking on ice.
Yeah.
You don't have a balance. You keep falling down. And it becomes very frustrating. And so I fear JavaScript because it really did not give me the guardrails that the statically typed languages gave me. And that fear turned into hatred for the language.
Yeah.
And so I never touched it. But then I had really good friends who were leveraging the power of dynamically typed languages like Ruby and Python. And I was like, my gosh, I can't handle that. But then I see them, they're not only, they're smart people, they're very capable, and they're delivering results with as much agility, if not more, than I can imagine.
Okay.
And then I asked the question, why is it that they are not afraid? What makes them different? And for me, at least, that journey really coincided with finally embracing test-driven development. And I started writing automated tests for my C# code, for my Java code. And I went from, oh, I know unit testing to, oh, I am practicing test-first development.
Yeah.
And once I started writing automated tests, I said, wait, not only can I write automated tests for my Java code, I can do it for Ruby, I can do it for Groovy. And the minute I started doing it, I'm like, wait, if I'm writing automated test, the reason I didn't like dynamic type languages is I don't have that guardrail.
Yeah.
But now I do have one. So the guardrails come in different forms. A compiler is a guardrail,
Yeah.
but as you know, a code may compile in Scala, Kotlin, Java, C#, C++,
Yeah.
but occasionally it may fail at runtime.
Right.
You can never write code that is correct because the compiler compiled it. That's not to say I don't need a compiler.
Yeah.
I want a compiler,
Yeah.
but in addition to it, I also need yet another guardrail, which is automated testing.
Testing.
But if I take that up a notch and rely a lot more on automated testing, now my fear of the language goes away
Right.
because I have an early feedback loop.
Yeah.
So to me, I started embracing dynamic type languages when I actually started practicing automated testing. And so now I actually, in all honesty, over the past about 10, maybe even a little longer, I've written more production code in dynamic type languages than statically type languages. And the reason for that is the me embracing the test-driven development, test-first development more than anything else.
Yeah.
And so to answer the question, maybe other developers are like me, where they fear this because they don't have the guardrails. You know, I drive up some mountains which have nice, roads, but it's freakily, fearful
Yeah.
when the mountains don't have guardrails.
Right.
And how many times do you hit the guardrails? I hope zero times,
times, yeah.
right? But the fact that there's a guardrail
It gives you a confidence.
gives you the confidence. It tells you if you were to miss, there is a last protection there.
True.
And on the roads that have guardrails, I still drive cautiously but with more confidence
Yeah.
than the roads where there are no guardrails.
True.
And to me, that automated testing is the guardrail that removes the fear and lets me embrace these technologies for the greater good.
That's a good perspective. In fact, I am trying to learn JavaScript. I worked on it, but every time you start working on a new project and you realize, okay, this is a new feature which is new for me.
Yep.
Cool. Now, in one of the talk, again, it's all coming from your talks only, I think. You mentioned about learning an extra language even if you're not using it. So what are your thoughts if, as a new developer, if they are starting their journey with any language, doesn't matter, Java, C++, or C#, should they learn another language just for safety, or will it help them in the primary language as well?
Well, so fundamentally, one of the key things for us to realize is language design is application design. And that is, let me again take back to about, 25 years. I predominantly was programming in C++. I was developing applications for, companies in C++. And when Java came out, they talked about something called interface-based inheritance. That just blew my mind, honestly. I'm like, what in the world? I have written C++ classes, I do inheritance, but how could you inherit an interface apart from a class? And you may call me silly and say, duh, that's a fundamental concept. It is if you start with Java. But when you start with C++, that's not something you talk about, you discuss. Never heard of anonymous inner classes, right? And the minute you see these concepts, you're like, whoa, what are these? And you're learning a language, but you're learning a design idea. And to give you another example of this, I was programming on a project in in C# for a company, and we were pairing up and working, together. And we were supposed to implement a particular class that manage some transactions. And as we were writing the code, really good developer, he said, we could write it this way. And I said, hey, would you mind if we try a slightly different idea in C#? He was like, well, why not? Go ahead and try it. So I showed him a different way to do it. And he literally stood up and said, wait, I've never seen a C# code written like this.
Oh.
This is intriguing. It blows my mind. And as he was saying it, the team leader came around and he looked at what we were doing and he gave a pat on my back and said, are you trying to write Ruby code in C#? And I looked at him and said, what do you think? He's like, that's brilliant. And that's exactly literally what I did. I took the execute around method pattern, which is very common in Ruby, and applied it to C# code because C# had link lambda expressions available. And to me, that's the reason I want to learn different languages.
Yeah.
When you learn a different language, it changes your thinking on how you can use your own language. Much like how travel helps you to broaden your mind.
Yeah.
You know, you go to a place not because you want to live there, but you see things and you say, wait, that's a different way of doing things. Or I haven't seen that one. Or, oh, that's a nice way to hang something. And you come home and you can adapt something like that.
Right.
And it changes your living, right? It changes how you do things. That's the reason you want to. So to me, learning a language is not so you can program in it, so you can come back and program differently in the language you actually use. And so in effect, I would say it's not about learning a different language, it's really about learning a different paradigm.
Right.
Because when you learn a different paradigm, it changes your way of thinking. And now when it changes your way of thinking, you can embrace that different way of thinking within the constraints, but within the capabilities of the language you're programming in as well.